Thank you for bringing me on. I know we had a really good conversation via DM on Friday about the state of business in just in general, like how everything's been going with inflation, with um, just sales in a lot of businesses, right? A lot of sales has been
Yeah.
down, things that have been going on, and we were just chopping it up and talking about like what do we think is the cause? Like what's causing it? What is happening exactly? And what can we do differently, and we said, hey, let's bring it live, let's talk to everybody, the public, about it
Yeah.
and see what they think as well.
Yeah. Well, it specifically started because we were discussing how, there's a lot, well, not a lot, but there's this push lately online for like flash mobs and flash mobs to
Mhm.
spend money at Black businesses specifically in order to kind of keep them alive. And our discussion, you as an accountant and me as a business owner, were of not just an accountant, but an accounting like firm owner, like a business owner yourself, right? And then myself as a business owner, we're like, well, how is this going to work long term, right? Like the
Mhm.
flash mob is great for like an initial influx of cash,
Mhm.
but that's real top level numbers. Like we're just
Right.
talking about revenue. And I think what really bothers me about just what really bothers me about business and how people perceive business is that they always talk about revenue.
Yeah.
It's never about profit. And it's just like, oh, I made $1 million in a day, or I made $1 million in a year, or whatever. But I know a lot of business owners, and I'm sure you do too, who are making millions of dollars, but actually are spending more than they're making. And
Right.
so they're not even breaking even, right? So they're really broke, right? Despite the
Yeah.
fact that, oh, we can have the smoke and the mirrors online about how much money we made. And so I think that does a disservice to a lot of people because those folks who are not doing those numbers, they feel like, oh, like I'm not doing well enough. I need to work harder, I need to grind harder,
Yeah.
only to realize that once you get there, like there's a lot of underlying stuff that comes with that. And so I do understand that the economy is really bad right now. Um, and it could potentially even get worse. But my concern is that one, some of these businesses that are getting these flash mobs, to kind of help them out, it's just a temporary band-aid,
Yeah.
and what happens once that money is gone? Because once the expenses are paid and they've run through that money, that flash mob's not coming back.
Right.
So what now? And then what about all the businesses that don't have the flash mob?
Right.
Like, what are we doing, or what can be done to assist people in having a long-term fix as opposed to a temporary band-aid?
Yeah. Because, like you said, once the flash mob is done, or they come to you and they give you the money, they're expecting that that's going to help save your business.
Right.
And a lot, and if you can give someone money, but if the foundation is faulty, or if there's certain things that need to be implemented,
Mhm.
that or need to be focused on, that aren't, then that money is good as gone,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it makes sense.
I
It
just
makes
think that
sense.
I just think that people or business owners, like I was talking to somebody just the other day at a business event, and we were discussing the same topic. And she said, why do you think that business owners spend enough time on their finances? And I was like, no. As a business owner who for a long time didn't even want to talk about numbers, right? I was like, how much money we got in the bank right now? Right? Can we
Right.
make payroll? Can we make rent? Like, am I going to be homeless or not? Okay, good. We straight,
Yeah.
but as someone who was in that space, it's like the numbers can be very, very boring and mundane. And a lot of times they don't
Mm.
say what you want them to say, so you just kind of avoid it.
Uh,
Right. But the marketing is exciting. The connecting with your community is exciting. The colors and the logo and all that sort of stuff, that's the exciting
yeah.
part. And so you want to deal with that because it's less painful. But dealing with the numbers, it takes a lot of brain work, and a lot of entrepreneurs are really creatives who happen to
Yeah.
start a business, happen to monetize their creativity. And so as a creative myself, um, it can be really like, you've ever seen those memes of like the people that like the numbers are just floating
Yeah.
around. It's like, what is going on? And so I think that a lot of times we don't spend enough time on our numbers or dedicate enough energy toward our numbers. And then we get in situations like this. So again, with these these concerted efforts to save these companies, that's wonderful. But how these business owners don't have the education to prevent that from happening again in the first place.
Mm, yeah.
So, because it's going to happen
Oh,
again, right? Like the
yeah.
economy will go up and down. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a temporary fix today. What education do they need to ensure that they don't restart? This doesn't happen again. And not just a constant cycle of needing to be saved. So,
Yeah.
what would you say to that?
So I'm real big when it comes to the numbers on having emergency money, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
cash reserves.
Yeah.
And not saying that's going to stop everything that's happening, but it'll give you a lifeline, right? It'll give you the opportunity to make a few bad decisions or mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to make decisions that don't pan out. I like to give an example of how I had an employee last year that was with us for like 90 days. We do like a 30, 60, 90-day evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And, that employee didn't end up doing any kind of work, in the department that they were in. And I looked at the W-2 at the end of the year and it was like $15,000 that I paid and I got nothing in
Yeah.
return,
Yeah.
right? But because we had reserves and we had, certain things set up, we were able to kind of stomach that L or whatnot. So you're going to have decisions or things that you do that aren't going to pan out. But the emergency savings, the cash reserves are going to definitely help tide you over longer.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we look at e-commerce, right? If you have that, your business will last a little bit longer, and it'll give you the opportunity to figure out, okay, what's going on? Is my marketing not hitting? Are my shipping times too low? Is my pricing too low? All those things. Am I buying too much inventory at once versus really buying on a schedule of based on the previous historical sales, right? We're gonna if you're in e-com or if you're in any business, you're gonna make decisions that don't pan out,
Yeah.
right? We got clients that have bought way too much inventory, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
now you're trying to sell it out, and you end up having to sell it at cost just to get it off the shelves or whatnot, right? So, but because they have reserves or they have that going, that's really helped them to stomach those decisions that don't go well. Another thing too, in this time when the economy is acting the way it is and your sales are going down, it's a good time to look at your product or your service and say, is it the best that it could be? Right? There the climate of things, people are still buying, right? But why should they buy from you versus your competitors? If you have a daycare, why should they put their child in your daycare versus the one down the block? There's so many, right,
Mm-hmm.
to choose from, right? So what's your competitive advantage whenever it comes to your service or your product? And then that's the opportunity for you to refine it. If you're seeing that your sales cycle is a lot slower. Like I know for us, there was a time where our sales cycle was slow and I had to reevaluate the packages that we had. And I was like, you know what? There's not enough value. I got to put even more value into them, right? So that whenever we're selling, people can be enticed to want to sign on and that changed things or whatnot, right? So I think those two things can really help entrepreneurs to still keep going and to push through during these hard times.
Yeah. So you talked about the cash. You talked about the cash reserves, but how do you get cash reserves, right? You got to
Yeah,
have enough money in profit to be able to have the cash reserves,
yeah,
right? So I think it
yeah.
sounds great and that makes a lot of sense. But where do these cash reserves come from? Because when you're first starting a business, like everything goes back into the business. You may not even be paying yourself, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, where am I going to have this excess money just sitting around to be able to weather those storms?
Right.
So I know a lot of people like to subscribe to like the profit first method. But
Yeah.
honestly, and I love the author of Profit First. Like met him in person like several times, been to his office, but it don't work for me, right? It just doesn't, not for that particular business.
Right.
And I think that for e-commerce businesses, it's a bit different. And those who don't know what Profit First is, it's essentially a method of handling your money in which you take your profit first, almost like if
Yeah.
you were a regular employee and you paid yourself first. So
Right.
same kind of concept, right? They always say you should pay yourself first and then pay your bills after that. So in this case, you're basically taking the business's profit first or paying the business first and then paying everybody else, right? And so But things get tight. Like as an
Yeah.
e-commerce, as someone who is always shipping, right? And I've been doing my business for 11 years, so I'm at a point now where, or 12 years now, and so I'm at a point now where like I've streamlined things a lot, right? But for several years, it was like every extra dollar had to go into back into the business. And so sometimes that profit got to come out because payroll has to get made.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of things, right? And I think it might be a little bit different for maybe just service-based businesses. And I now have a service-based business, and I can tell you it's a lot easier to do profit first with that because there's no shipping involved. It's not a lot of employees. I don't need a ton of people to manage this business. But my product business, which is Naturalicious, which is a hair care company, for those who don't know, I'm constantly shipping. And depending on, the shipping is based, no matter what the customer pays, everybody wants free shipping, right? Let's just be honest. Everybody wants free shipping because Amazon got free shipping. They wanted free shipping and they want it within 2 days. That's not feasible for me, right? So my shipping costs are based upon the weight of the package and the distance that it has to travel from where I am in Michigan. So if I'm shipping to Hawaii, 5 pounds to Hawaii, that's going to be way more expensive than me from Detroit shipping 5 pounds to Chicago, right? And so no matter what the customer pays, as a business owner, you can only charge so much in shipping nowadays.
Right.
I can't charge you the actual cost of your shipping because you ain't going to want to buy the product, right? If I'm shipping to you in Hawaii, it's going to cost $20 to ship to you, $25, you're not buying it. So I got to eat some of that shipping cost. And so when we talk about like the bottom line numbers, like we don't even like think about those things.
Yeah.
So again, where is these reserves supposed to come from if you like a brand new business? Or
Great
even
question.
not even a brand new business, even like a business within 5 years, like you're still dealing with the same sort of issues.
Great question. So are you asking from a perspective of a brand new, like you said, or someone that's been in business for a while? 'Cause I guess it's
Either one,
different.
because I feel like if you have the issues as a brand new business, you're going to have those same issues as a mid-sized business because you didn't resolve them when you didn't nip it in the bud in the beginning. So like that's what we're saying with the flash mob thing, right? Like some of these businesses have been around for a while, but they're still dealing with issues that they would have dealt with when they first started 5-6 years
Great
ago.
question. Okay. So to start off, let's look at people who are just starting out. There's too many of us entrepreneurs starting businesses with no money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to start with something, right? Whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, you have to figure out, okay, I'm starting this business. What all are all the costs that I need to account for in the beginning of the business? And I need to have that money available.
Mm-hmm.
Then I need to add tax on top of that, right? So add another additional 5, 10, right? So now you're coming into the business with some reserves from the very beginning. Another thing too, pricing is so important, right? There's so many of us that we price our products too low.
Yes.
And when you price
And we are scared to raise
too,
our prices.
we're scared to raise our prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times whenever we speak to clients, we always ask, how'd you come up with your pricing? It's like, oh, I saw Walmart price it a certain way, so I wanted to keep it around. I'm like, Walmart? Like, what you're trying to compete with Walmart? Like, good luck. Yeah. There's no competing with them. Like low pricing is just like their thing or whatnot, right? So you really got to sit down and you have to calculate how much your price should be. And a lot of times when we do the calculation, we leave out the labor part, right? So if I'm the one manufacturing my product or I'm the one doing anything in the product creation phase, how much time am I putting into that, and what is my time valued at, right? And then I'm using that as a part of the cost. And then now when I transition it over to an employee, what's their cost? Now that's being wrapped into the pricing. A lot of times if you buy like a shoe and you resell it, the shoe might cost $20, you might want to sell it for 50 or whatnot, but you're not accounting for all the other pricing. You're not accounting for the shipment of the shoe from the manufacturer to you, the freight, right? So there's so many different factors in the pricing that gets missed.
Yeah.
And that can impact your reserves, right? Because now you're making money. People are buying from you. You're like, oh man, people are buying. And you're not realizing that, yeah, people are buying because your price is very low. That's the reason why they're buying, not necessarily because your product is the greatest.
Yeah.
And so now you're in a constant cycle. You're buying, you're selling, you're buying more inventory, selling, buying more inventory, and you realize I don't have enough money to pay myself, my team, Facebook ads,
Yeah.
this rent for this warehouse, all these things. Another thing too that you mentioned, the shipping, right?
Yeah.
That's so important to really, really figure out. Like you said, you might have clientele in Hawaii or in Nigeria or somewhere, right? So you have to use DHL to
Yeah.
like to ship because you wanted to get to them as quickly as possible,
Right.
right? But can you figure out how to get it to them cheaper? Can you use a boat? You know, like these are things that you have to sit down and really strategize, right? Like if I'm going to use the boat instead of DHL, that means that I need to have a certain amount of inventory on hand to satisfy the demand. I have to like really plan that out, but that's going to help me to pay less. And then another thing too, if you are shipping to more expensive parts of the world, how much percentage of your total sales is that compared to you shipping domestically,
Hmm.
right? And then where are the most important, most popular cities and states that you ship to,
Hmm.
right? For us internally, we have a lot of clients in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, right? Looking
Yeah.
at the data, you see, okay, so like if you're in ecom, if you have the same situation where you're in Houston, but you have a lot of clientele in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, what's the average shipment cost of shipping things there? And really like averaging it all out and saying, okay, you know what, my shipping is going to be $8. And having that conversation with your customers and say, look, I know y'all are used to the Amazon shipping or whatnot. We're a small business. This is the price. But I promise you, you're gonna get your stuff in a timely manner. You're gonna get a really good product. You know, like you already know you have a huge brand. The communication with customers, they understand. They just want to be communicated with or whatnot. And a lot of times, you know, those tough conversations, we think is gonna go wrong, but they're like, oh, I'm riding with you. I
Yeah.
appreciate everything that Naturalicious offers. Thank you for telling me
Yeah.
or whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah.
did that answer?
I think that's an excellent point that just communicating with people,
Yeah.
proactively communicating with people will circumvent a lot of issues because they don't, people are just scared that other people are going to like not buy from them or disappear. But it's like you actually have a counterproductive effect if you don't communicate with them. You just tell them
Yeah.
up front, like, this is what's going on. I remember one time I was one of those people who was afraid to raise prices, right? Because I'm like, well, I sell shampoo, right? I sell conditioner, I sell hair care products. I can't charge $70 for shampoo. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna buy. But there was one point where I was like, we've got to raise prices. We've got to do this. And so I didn't raise the $70 nothing, but I did raise prices, right? And so prices rose about 7%, which is a pretty significant amount. But we had to raise it because I had never risen prices at that point. I think at that point we were like 6 or 7 years old at that point. Had never
Uh,
raised prices in all that time, but it had to be done. And I remember having a conversation. I went on live, just like I am doing right now. I have a private community on Facebook, and I went live and I was like, listen, y'all, like, I know you all love our products and I love you guys. And I want to be able to continue to serve you in the best way and not have to cut our ingredients and not have to cut all the other things that we provide to you all outside of just the product itself, like the unboxing experience. We want that to stay high level. But in order to do that, we've got to raise prices. And so when you communicate like that, they're like, oh, I get it, right? Like, no, I don't want you to cut ingredients either. I don't want to have a crappy unboxing experience either. I want to continue to get all my little stuff that comes with my package, right? And so
yeah.
if you just say, hey, we're raising prices, that's it, you may not get a great response. But if you
Yeah.
say, here's why we're doing this, here's the reason to the rhyme, then they're more on board. They're like, okay, we get it, because they want you to survive. If your business is not in existence, now they have to go, it's an inconvenience to them because now they've got to go find some new product that they want. But I think it's important for us to talk about services too, right?
Yeah.
So like Katie Smith on here earlier said that they have hold on, let me find it. They have a dance studio
Hmm.
and they've been in existence for 23 years. And basically they're starting over since the pandemic. And so that's the whole new thing. And now, Katie, I don't know if you have like I'm assuming you have a brick and mortar building. I don't know if you own the building, if you're renting the building, or what have you. But basically, they were saying that they're experienced a lot of issues with those same not having the reserves, basically, that we were talking about. So regardless of if you are, service or if you are product, I do think it's a little bit easier as someone with this type of business
Yeah.
when you have a home-based service business and it's just you, right? I do think that's a lot easier. But if you have like a brick and mortar space and you're paying employees and all that sort of stuff, as someone who had that as well and had to close it, I can see how that could be a challenge as well. Probably even more so than an e-commerce business, product business.
For sure. It can be challenging. It's the same rules apply, right? The pricing is important, but then another thing too that a lot of service-based businesses don't really take into account is their capacity, right? So let me break that down. So if you have, let's say you have a dance studio like Katie Smith, Christine, right? And you have, let's say, 5 employees that you're paying. Have you calculated the capacity for each of those employees? How many people can they teach, right? For you to not only be profitable, for you to make a sizable profit, right? And then a lot of times what we end up finding out is our team members are at 50% capacity, 60%, 40%. So that's a lot of money being left out, right? Let's take it a step further. Let's say you are a daycare owner, right? I think a lot of people would understand this. You have a capacity. Each daycare has a licensed capacity, right? It could be 100 children, it could be 50, whatever it is. They have a licensed capacity that they cannot cross. Then they have their current enrollment, right? So let's say you are licensed to have 100 kids in your center, but at the moment you only have 50 kids in your center, and you have employees. You probably might have 5 to 6 employees or whatnot. Does your state have laws or rules around how many kids can each employee work with? Right? If they do, then you have to adhere to that. But if they don't, now that gives you an opportunity to figure out, okay, how can I maximize each employee? What is too many kids for them to work with to where the quality starts to decrease? Because we want to make sure that each child is taken care of properly. Each child is given the proper care. We don't want to overextend each of the teachers, right? So we got to sit down and do that work and figure out what is that sweet spot. And then once we figure that out, how much money can that person make for us, right? So if you're a teacher and you can work with 5 children and your tuition for the year is, let's say, $200 a week, right? $200 a week ends up being what, like 10,200 for the year. 5 kids. That means, I'm just throwing some rough math out there. I guess that means that you could potentially, your employee could make about 50,000 for you, right? So now you got to figure out, okay, how much can I reasonably pay you, right? And that's what a lot of childcare centers have issues, right? Because you want to pay your people, but then are you making enough to justify paying them more? So now that means you need to increase your prices, right? Because in that example that I just gave, 10,200 times 5 is 51,000, right? So that means if you're paying your childcare person 50,000, you are breaking even essentially, right? So that means that $200 might need to go to 300, right? So it's like a puzzle that you have to sit down and play with. That a lot of times, if you're not skilled to play with that, you need an accountant or someone to really help you to do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But once you figure that out, now you can like just take off and grow or whatnot. So, and then I guess the equivalent in e-commerce would be if you have a warehouse and you have warehouse workers, how many products can each warehouse worker ship per hour or per day, right? If you have customer service, how many calls can they handle? How many emails can they handle? So KPIs,
Uh-huh.
key performance indicators, you're measuring all these things and you're really getting down to the nuts and bolts of, okay, here's what's going on in the business.
Yeah. Two things with that. I think that um, I think you're obviously completely spot on with the KPIs, but I think that we are, just like we're afraid to raise prices, we're afraid to fire people. and we
Ooh.
very emotionally attached to our businesses and emotionally attached to people. And as a like people person, as a very social human being, I found that I had to unfortunately not get so close to my staff, because when it came time to have to fire them, it was really, really hard, because like we're friends now,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to we're on the same level, as opposed to, or that's how they see it, as opposed to, kind of superior and, the person who works for that person. And so I had to stop being at the office so much. I had to start working at home because I
Ooh.
found myself like getting like, hey, let's go out for drinks. I'm like, yeah, girl, let's go. We all out for drinks, and then tomorrow I gotta fire you, right? So
Yeah.
it became a huge issue. And so I think if we have to streamline and really focus. And again, as business owners, a lot of times we are creatives who have monetized what it is that we like to do, right? And so we are naturally social. We tend to be social people, so it becomes hard to have to separate that. Yeah, that whole RCB says, or we are family. Like companies will say that, like we're a family, but then I gotta let you go,
Yeah.
right? That becomes hard, and so I think to keep those costs down, you do have to focus on those KPIs and just be like real logical about it, real analytical and real left brain. Like 1 + 1 isn't equaling 2 here. Like you said, you had an employee who you pay $15,000 to, and you didn't get $15,000 worth of value out of that person.
No.
And we will keep somebody on at our detriment.
Yeah.
We're losing sleep over it, looking at the numbers like, oh my gosh, things are adding up, and we haven't gotten rid of the weak link,
Yeah.
and so I think that as business owners we have to really do that. That's a huge thing. I think the other thing with that too is that we tend to hire people too fast, I think, because
Mm.
there's things that you could still do that you just don't want to do,
Right.
and you want to outsource it to somebody else, but truly, like, you're not at a point yet where you need to outsource it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things that I did in the beginning of my when I first started Naturalicious was that I didn't hire anybody until I actually needed them. For 2 years, I was in my basement
Mm.
working by myself. I recruited my son, who at the time was only 2 or 3 years old. He would help do stuff. The person I was dating at the time, he was helping me. You know what I mean? Like, I was recruiting where I could and getting as much free labor as I could from people until it was like, okay, I really do need to actually hire somebody to do this full time. So there's a difference
Yeah.
between wanting to hire somebody and needing. And I think it's important what you said, like figuring out what your time is worth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important, but I think a lot of times we overvalue ourselves. Like, like, I know my worth. And
Yeah.
it's like, but your business ain't giving the worth to say that it's commensurate with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so what my time is worth, $200 an hour. Okay, great. But you
Yeah.
can't, your business is not making enough to even pay someone, say, $15 an hour yet. So you still need to be doing
Yeah.
that job, because you're the only person who's going to work for free unlimited hours for this business. Nobody else is going
Yeah.
to do that. So I think that's important too, that we don't want to, we hire too fast and we fire too
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah. I have so much to contribute to that, what you just said. So number one, there's a way that you can actually calculate your hourly value. You can take your financial statements,
Mm-hmm.
right, for the whole year or for the last 12 months, look at how much profit you have at the end of your income statement, add back into that, like, car expenses, cell phone, things like that, travel,
Mm-hmm.
add that to that profit number, and then take that number and divide that by 2,080.
Okay.
Yeah. So an example would be, we pull out a calculator. If let's say that number was 100 grand,
Okay.
right?
I'm doing my math here too. Mm-hmm.
Are you doing the math? Okay.
Yeah, I got my calculator.
Let's say your profit plus the all those personal expenses that really could be business, that we put into the business, but they could also be personal.
Yeah.
Let's say that adds up to 100,000,
Okay.
and you divide that by 2,080.
Now,
That gives you 40.
where's that 2080 number come from?
Great question. So 2,080 is 40 hours a week
Okay.
times 52 weeks in a year.
Okay.
Yes.
You would
So
just know
two.
that number off the top of your head. Okay, 2080.
Yep. So now that number is $48, right? So
Yep.
in theory, you can use that as what your time is worth, right? And now as you grow your business, and let's say that profit number gets to be $1 million, Now, you see what I'm saying? So you can always do that calculation every 12 months.
Right.
You can even take it a step further and now say, okay, I'm looking for an EA, right?
What's an EA?
An EA is an executive assistant,
Thank you.
right?
Cool people may
So,
not know that.
right. So, I think that's naturally a lot of people's first hire. Can I afford this person? You take that $48 and you divide that by four, and that gives you $12. And the reason you divide it by four is because that's the natural ROI, the return on investment that you would want, right? So now you have $12 that you can spend on an EA, and you obviously may not be able to find that in the US with these inflation costs and how everything is. So it might make sense to find that somewhere, but you have up to $12 that you can spend on that. And now you start to transfer a lot of those administrative things to that person. And then hopefully as you transfer those things to that person, that frees up your schedule to go do more money making
Yeah.
activities to grow the business, right? You said another thing too about we get too close to the employees and I agree. I know I did that in the beginning. And I don't think there's anything wrong with getting too close, but there does have to be a separation. There has to be you can't be around your people like 24/7, right? Like if you're in the office with your team, you can be with them for like 30 minutes to an hour or 2 hours or however you want it, but not 8 hours. Like it shouldn't be we're all in the same room and we're working together and we're powwowing and we're having a great time
Mhm.
because the level of respect tends to dip,
Yeah.
right? And that's even for managers as well, right? For people that have managers within their company that are managing
Mhm.
team members, sometimes you get way too close and now you don't have the guts to have those tough
Yeah.
conversations with that person that you're leading, right?
Mhm.
So I do think forming the relationship, it makes sense. It makes sense to um, know more about the people that are working for you. What are their goals? What are their interests, right? Because that's going to help you serve them
Mhm.
better. But there does need to be a level of separation as CEOs for sure.
Yeah. I had an employee once. I remember I told her to do something, and she's like, "Or you could do it," and I'm like, "Like what? Like I'm paying you." And so I'm like, "Wow," and so that's when I realized I need to separate here because clearly you think we on the same page and we're not. So
Wait, that's a
I
good
completely
one. How many people on this live have ever been through that where you've told a team member, "Hey, I need you to do this," and they're like, "No, I think you should do it." Right? Because it's just happened to me before as
oh
well,
my.
so I definitely get it, and it wakes you up. At that point, you're like,
Mm-mm.
wait a minute,
Yeah, like
yeah,
I'm seriously cutting you, but because as a business owner, sometimes you may not get paid, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm making sure your ass get paid, and I'm not even getting paid, and you talking
yeah.
to me like this? I don't think so. You be ready to like pull out the hood on them. So Melanin and Moss says, how do service based companies make up their startup costs? Because you said that too many businesses are starting without money. How do we calculate this as part of pricing or operating costs when these are or were hard costs? Do you understand the question? You want me to read it
Yeah,
again?
yeah, I have a decent understanding of it. So they're asking, how do you calculate startup costs, or how do you do the pricing of whatever it is you're trying to do? Yeah, if you could
So
read it again, that'd be
the
great.
question says, how do service-based companies make up their startup costs? So basically, where do they get their startup cost money from?
Okay.
And then secondly, how do we calculate the startup cost as a part of the pricing or operating costs
Okay,
when
so it's two
they're
questions.
hard costs?
Okay. It's two questions. It's a two-part
Yeah.
question. So to answer the first one, startup costs, how do you calculate that? You got to figure out what all is needed to start your business, right? So from the standpoint of how much marketing are you going to need, how much product do you need to purchase, how much does the product cost, and obviously in the beginning you may not need to purchase a bunch of product. You might just need to purchase
Well,
a little bit.
this is a
And then,
service-based business.
oh, I'm tripping. Okay, service based. Okay, so whatever service you're selling, right? And a lot of services don't really require too much expense, I would think, right? So it would really be based around, obviously startup costs. You have to create the LLC and things like that. You have to, if you have office supplies or anything like that that you need to purchase, marketing materials, things like that, it would make sense to put all that on a spreadsheet, list it out, and list out how much each of those cost. And then that'll give you your startup costs. And you could even start, let's say the startup costs are really like $500. I wouldn't just say, okay, I'm just gonna start with 500. I would take it a step further, 10x it. Like, I need $5,000 before I start this business. I need to build up 5 grand
Mhm.
and go in with 5,000. Right. The more you go in with, the better. Right. It's gonna insulate you from a lot of, because you are gonna make wrong decisions in the beginning. Right. So having that money that you can continuously pull from is going to help you to continue to run the business. Now, the second part of the question was, how do you implement the startup costs into the pricing of the service?
Right, basically. So that way
So,
you're, I guess, profiting, you know, because you're running through that startup cost. So how do
mhm,
you price yourself? Is there a formula? I guess it's a question to ensure that you basically make that money back.
got you. I mean, so I have a service-based business, so I can look at it from that standpoint. Wait, so she said I have a camping company, so I have a bit of hard costs for tents. I'm struggling to figure out how to recoup that by calculating those costs in the service price. Okay. Okay. So camping company, you need to buy tents. Tents would be assets on your balance sheet. Um, you have to figure out how many tents do you need, right? I'm assuming the camping is in one park, or is it in multiple parks? Figuring out how many tents you would need, how many people you would want to do the camping trip with, right? So if you say, hey, I just want to only have 20 people on this trip, maybe 2 people per tent, right? Maybe it's couples. So now I just need 10 to start out. And then so now you have those costs of the tents. And so now, whenever you are selling the service, you're looking at it from a standpoint of what am I selling? What is the service that I'm selling? Let's say it's a camping trip, right? What all comes with that, right? I'm assuming you might offer food. You might offer transportation. There's certain things that you might offer that have to be put into the pricing, right? Obviously, you're offering the tents. So looking at it from that standpoint, let's say each tent costs $1,000 and you buy 10 tents, that's $10,000. So you have to look at it from the standpoint of how many camping trips per month are you going to be doing, or are you going to budget doing? And then now break that $10,000 across those trips, right? So looking at it from that standpoint is going to help. And then obviously your labor, because you're going to be in the beginning the one that's going to be the camping trip host, and then at some point as you grow you'll hire someone to replace you to be the host of those trips, right? So how much does your time cost? So there's a lot of different factors in that. Hopefully that answered that question.
Um, I think so. Now, for some reason, I can't see any new comments,
Really?
so I don't even have the camping trip comment on my
Oh,
screen.
wow.
So I don't know what else people are saying. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm able to see any more comments for some reason. The last comment
Okay.
I see is from RCB that says they don't be seeing that part. That's the last thing I saw. I
Oh, that's
have.
the last thing. Okay, I can read you. Wait,
Yeah, I
that
don't
must have
know.
been that must have been high up. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of people agree. Whenever I ask that question around, have you ever had somebody that you were saying, hey, I need you to do
Mhm.
this, and they come back and they say, no, you do it. A lot of people agree. That's definitely happened to them. Uh, Christine said, did you say take your profit number or your revenue number? You take your profit number and divide that by 2,080. Yeah, RCB said they don't be seeing that part. Then Danny Loves Darren says, as a supervisor, I have had someone try that. They got the mom look. And the get done what I asked you to do, please. That's amazing when you all you gotta do is just give a look,
Give a look. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I'm so sad I can't see the comments anymore. That's okay. So run that formula back again. So you take your profit number for the year or the previous year and
Yeah.
divide
So if you were
it
to
by
do this,
Divide
If
by
you were to do this
2080.
calculation right now, you would look at the past 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then divide that by 2080.
like
But then at some point
2008.
you said something about dividing by 4.
Yeah. So now, if you want to hire somebody to like replace
Mm-hmm.
you in some of the tasks you're doing, right? Because for a lot of people listening, they may not have an assistant at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and an assistant is like the most powerful position that you can have because they can literally, it's like having two of you
Yeah.
because you can transfer so much to them and you build out the SOPs and they handle a lot of that stuff,
Right.
right? But so now we figure out, okay, how much can we pay them,
Mm-hmm.
or how much can we pay someone to do something like that? And you have, and in that example that we did, $48 was what you were worth if you had 100 grand of
Mm-hmm.
profit, and then you divide that 48 by 4, and then now you have a budget of up to 12. That doesn't mean spend 12. It means you have up to 12 that you can spend on that
So
position.
you're dividing
Right.
by 4 because you're gonna pay someone else, not
Bingo.
yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's really helpful. I feel like that's a nugget. Like
Yeah.
that whole like figuring out your worth. Because next time I go to hire somebody and they tell me I know my worth, I'm gonna be like, show me your profit from last year
Right.
and let me divide it by 2080 and I tell you what it's worth.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to this whole kind of, and let me know if more comments come up or more questions because like I said, I can't see them.
Okay.
But I want to get back to this concept of this, what's happening right now, right? So what's happening right now in this economy is that all these businesses are starting to fail. And I can, as a business owner who owns a few businesses, but one of them has been around the longest, and as a product-based business, a lot of my competitors have either closed altogether or they've sold, and only a few have sold for like big numbers, right? A few who have sold for like less than they were actually even really making a couple years ago. But at least they were able to sell for something, and some of them have just closed altogether. And honestly, I feel like this is for a number of reasons. I know the economy is bad, but I feel like, and this may be a little bit insensitive, and I'm not speaking on this in terms of my industry. I'm talking about all over. We cannot just blame the economy, right? The economy is bad, sure, right? But are we only going to be able to survive in good times? Like that's not a business, right? That's not how businesses work. Like we need to be able to thrive, period. And I think we don't have the education for a number of reasons, like especially as Black businesses, right? As Black people, we have, by and large been kind of kept behind um, from knowing a lot of things like the 1% know and our non-Black counterparts. But all this information is available on Google, right? And I feel like we have not either learned it or been taught it so that we can weather these sorts of economic situations.
Yeah.
Because if we're only going to be able to survive when things are flourishing, then that puts us in a really, really bad position. And so we have to, then we're relying on things like flash mobs to come and save us. And we're relying on things like GoFundMe to come and save our businesses, right? And I really feel like the Band-Aid is great. Say, hey, let's all get together and do group economics and spend a bunch of money at Ephraim's business. But if Ephraim has not done the work to prepare his finances for his business, which I said earlier is like the boring part of the business. Most business owners don't want to deal with that, right? Then Ephraim's going to be in that same situation again. I hate to use that as an example, but you know what I mean? Like you're just going to be in that same situation again in a few years. So how do we ensure the longevity? Like they need to have the education of here's the foundation, right? I feel like everybody wants to get to like the exciting part. Everybody wants to be able to say, I made $1 million, I made $2 million, I'm a $20 million business. But again, you've got $20 million businesses that spent $22 million and they're broke, right? So revenue numbers literally don't impress me at all, right? It's less about how much money you have and how much money you're keeping. So I feel like the easy answer is like, well, everybody just needs to get educated. But how do we make this a priority? What do we need to do as a group, as a society, as a culture of business owners? And I'm not just saying Black business owners, because there's a lot of businesses that are going out of business regardless of race or background, right? How do we as small business owners, period, ensure that we have the tools and the consistency, the patience, and the dedication to ensure that this doesn't happen again to us?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an
Yeah.
easy answer to that.
It's not. And I think number one, having these conversations is very important. I think because you know you can have, and another thing too, when everything was really good, you can have these conversations and it's not going to hit the same as whenever things are kind
Sure.
of down. You know, now you have everybody's attention, right? So now that we have everybody's attention, we need to have these conversations more. I also think getting into, like, everyone needs to do at least one accelerator or something, right? Like you've done Tuck, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you done the Goldman Sachs one as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did both. I did Goldman Sachs, I did Tuck, and I did Backstage Capital. Or
Nice. So
Backstage Accelerator is what they called it. Backstage
yeah,
Accelerator.
I did Tuck and I did Goldman Sachs and I also did Founders First.
Okay.
And all three of them, like, it accelerated like
Mm-hmm.
my mind and how I look at business or
Yeah.
whatnot, right? And I think the business education is extremely important. It's going to give you a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, a lot of our counterparts, they come from households where their parents might have been entrepreneurs, or, you know, even if they weren't entrepreneurs, they were resourceful enough to say, oh, Bob down the street does the same business that you're trying to do. I can put you guys in contact, and now you have a mentor,
Yeah.
right? So seeking out mentorship is extremely important, right? Like doing this thing, this business thing by yourself is a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, you have to have a circle. You have to have people that you can you know, have these conversations with, but then also mentors that can mentor you and coach you, because it's going to help you get to where you're trying to go a lot faster. And they're going to hopefully be able to help you avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes that they made,
Yeah.
right? Now, some of these programs may not be in your budget, but there are more cost effective programs that you can start out with. And you can, like, and there's a lot of information on YouTube. I take in a lot of YouTube information
Mm-hmm.
from these two guys, Alex Hormozy
Mm-hmm.
and Dan Martell.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are amazing. Like the value that they're giving on their YouTube and their social media, it almost feels like you're giving all this away for free. Like you could sell all this in an accelerator or something like
Yeah.
that, right? So there's information there, but a lot of times we may not know where it's at, or like you said, you know, like, do you really want to sit down and watch these videos or listen to these videos when I could be listening to something that's more entertaining, right? Like we have to, you know, as business owners, you're going to hit a wall at some point, and it might be at 300,000, it might be at 3 million,
Mm-hmm.
but at some point you're going to hit a wall, or you're going to need more education or more something to kind of help you push through that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think that's the joy for me of entrepreneurship. It's not necessarily the money is cool, but for me, it's like a game. It's like, how do I up level? How do I get past that? If other people are able to get past it the way I think I should be able to get past it too, like they're no different than me
Yeah.
or whatnot. And I'm gonna figure it out somehow. It might take some time, but I'm gonna eventually figure this thing out or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So just really enjoying these hard times. And it's hard. It's easy to say, you know, enjoy the hard times, right? When it's literally bad for a lot of people. But I think if people, you know, honestly look at it from a standpoint of what can I do differently,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like all this stuff is happening,
Yeah.
but is this really happening to everybody, or is this just happening to certain people? And if it is,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things that I can take from this? Because I, like, when we spoke on Friday, I said there are people out there saying that we're in a recession, but yet Beyonce's selling out football stadiums, Usher's selling out his residency, and he's on tour right now, right? And like every concert you go to of like names, they're sold out. Like people are going, right? You go to the airport. Airport has so much traffic at each of these airports. You go to brunch, you go out to the club, packed,
Yeah.
right? And the club is making more money now than back in the day when we were younger, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole like economics of the club has changed. You don't, for a lot of clubs, you don't even have to pay a cover fee to go in, but they're going to sell you hookah. They're going to sell you drinks. They're going to sell you a section, right? There's no dance floor anymore, you know,
Yeah.
and they're still selling out, right? So when you look at it from that standpoint, it's like, okay, money is still being circulated.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I need to do to get my hands on some of that money? I need to potentially put more value out. I need to do something different. I need to go on live more,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
When the economy was booming, there was no need to really be on live
Mm-hmm.
as much. Now that it's slowed down, you got to market yourself more. You got to put yourself out there more. So, just really looking at it from a standpoint of, okay, what are some things that I can do differently to really continue on? And then also, do you love what you're doing, right? If it's just money, then you're going to get tired at some point, right? But if you really enjoy and you're passionate about what you do, then you'll have the urge to really fight through and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I think that to the point of do you love what you do? I think that there can become and we discussed this, people can get too emotionally attached to the business and
Yeah.
not understand, like, hey, the writing's on the wall. Maybe I need to not close, maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to pivot who my target audience is. Maybe it's no longer, 65-year-old ladies with cats, right? Hypothetically. Maybe now it's black men with beards. Like, who knows, right? Like, whatever it is, I think that we get really attached and we don't, as entrepreneurs, we tend to be very resourceful, but we also get real, especially, I feel like, especially as like us as Black business owners, a lot of times we are creating solutions to problems that didn't exist. And we get excited about helping others with it, right? And then we find a way to monetize that. And because we help somebody else, we have this like super fulfilling experience, right? And
Yeah.
then now it's like, well, I'm not serving these people anymore because they're not even buying from me, but I'm just going to try and pour gas on the fire and hope that suddenly like they come back around. Or it's like the same thing with Facebook ads, right? Like Facebook ads aren't working for me, but I'm going to pour more money onto it, hoping that more money is going to make the ads work. Like they're already, if that particular thing's not working for you, maybe you need to find a different marketing avenue, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that's a big issue, is the emotional attachment
Yeah.
that we have to our businesses and the unwillingness to shift or close altogether and start something brand new, or pivot something significant that is the crux of the business, whether it's the target audience, whether it's what your product is, whatever. But if you look at some businesses that are extremely successful, like Airbnb started out as a dating app, you know,
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah, it
wow.
started out as a dating app and that didn't work. And it
Yeah.
turned into what we know Airbnb to be now. There's several businesses that started out as something and then that thing wasn't working. And then they became famous for, whatever their next iteration was. And I think we really have to take the emotion out of it sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, because that can be, seriously to our detriment if we're not careful. And then also, like, businesses have life cycles. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we've discussed, like the natural hair industry, which is where one of my businesses is in.
Yeah.
In 10 years ago, everybody was wearing natural hair. Everybody was, having natural hair meetups, and there was natural hair this and that. And the relaxer companies, they were, worried that they were going to go out of business because all these natural hair companies, these small little at-home natural hair businesses were popping up. And then next thing you know, they started trying to create products to compete with the small businesses. So what did those small businesses start to do? They then started to say, oh, L'Oreal is selling, I have to sell my shampoo for, and I'm speaking as a general business owner, not as myself. I have to sell my shampoo for $25 because I'm using the best ingredients and the freshest ingredients, and they're really helping people's hair
Hmm.
and they're helping people to thrive, right? They're safe, they're non-toxic, they're organic, they're plant-based or whatever, right? L'Oreal or some Unilever come along and they create a chemical laden product full of trash, but it's only $10, right? And I think a huge disservice that business owners did in this industry is they decided they had to compete with them,
Mm.
because then they start trying to lower their price, but you can't compete with L'Oreal and Unilever.
No.
To your point earlier, your unique selling proposition was that your products were safe, healthy, non-toxic, organic, plant-based,
Yeah.
really made your curls do what they needed to do and all that sort of stuff. These folks over here don't care about you.
No.
They're trying to get a dollar.
Yeah.
And so if by and large this group of Black business owners who were making their products at home and eventually kind of growing had just kept their standards, right? They kept their standards and kept their price point at the $25. Sure, you can go and you can buy that $10 product, but it's not going to do for you what this $25 product will.
Yeah.
Those other brands would then be forced to either level up or go away. And these businesses today would not, I don't believe, would be suffering so bad, because now you're trying to compete with somebody who has economies of scale. They
Yeah.
can afford to spend $10 on products because they're only making it for $1.50, if that. They're probably making it for pennies. Your product costs you half the cost of what you're selling it for.
Yeah.
You can't compete, unless you cut your ingredients too. So you cut your ingredients, customers notice. Now you got less sales, and it's a trickle down effect. And so, luckily for Naturalicious, we never cut our prices. In fact, we raised them. And I really believe that is why we're still here, is because whereas a lot of my competitors are not, because their prices were so low that when COVID happened and the price of everything shot up, you can no longer afford your raw materials. So now you're like using your own money to try and fund a business, on top of the fact that you have shipping, you have employees, you have rent, you have all these other things. The math isn't mathing anymore, and so you have to have that nice kind of cushion in there, to your point, so you have reserves to be able to weather those storms. But when I look at this industry now, I see a lot of people starting to go to wigs and weaves, and I am not a natural hair Nazi. Like, I'm like, do what you want to do with your hair. I don't really care. But I think a lot of businesses have not seen the writings on the wall. Like, the industry is not what it was 10 years ago, right? And so it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to pivot? Are you going to add a different business onto your into your income? Are you going to maybe stop? Maybe in addition to selling your hair care products, which you are maybe very emotionally tied to, maybe you also serve the people that are telling you, we don't want this as much anymore. We want something like, what do? And I think that people are just too stuck on where they were and how they started, and unwilling to shift when the time is clearly here.
No, this is good, because you can't be, so to even touch on what you were saying earlier, you can't be way too emotionally invested in your business to where you're like stuck and you can't move and you can't make any pivots or whatnot. You have to always, and so another thing too that people should do, um, a SWOT analysis, right? Like strategy, planning. You mentioned that earlier, right? Like people don't do enough strategy and planning. And I didn't really, I mean, we would do them, but it wasn't until I went to Tuck and they were talking about it more in depth that I was like, oh, this is like a CEO should really be spending a lot of time looking at strategy and implementing strategy and coming up with strategy, right? And we should definitely be doing that, because when you think about it, you have to always be on the pulse of what's going on in your industry. An example I'll give, like 10 years ago, I was doing only tax returns for individuals. And then I started to see TurboTax every single year, and the commercials were coming and they were saying things like, taxes are so easy, a dumb person could do it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I saw the shift and I saw my numbers start to drop every single year. So I didn't wait for me to like go out of business. I was like, no, I'm about to like pivot. And luckily I'm a CPA and I like business. So I pivoted into the small business space because I saw that was growing. Right. But so not being too married to what's going on, you have to be able to figure out and have your finger on the pulse. And you said something right now with, the natural hair industry, you're seeing a change, right? So do you still stay married to it, or do you make some pivots, so that you can like stay in business and you can continue impacting, right? I think that's the important thing. And so we have to make time for that though. A lot of times like you said, our head is down and we're just doing the creative, fun marketing type of things. But you have to make time for these type of activities in your business. Otherwise, you're gonna get killed. And even for me now, even with what we do, I might need to do another pivot, right? With the automation and AI coming, right? So it's like you're constantly having to like figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And well, we had Blockbuster, then Redbox came. We had Redbox, then Netflix came. So you don't know what's going to happen to your industry. You just got to be prepared.
Yeah. That's complete related, but sidebar. How are Redboxes still around? Like, I go to the grocery store and it'd be a Redbox. I'm like, who is walking up to buy a DVD? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you still have a DVD player? Who's keeping you in business? I understand.
A lot,
But anyway,
a lot of the old school, because there's still a lot of old school people that don't, are not migrating towards online and paying for subscriptions, right?
yeah.
And then you also have the people that might be new to this country
Hmm.
and they deal in cash or whatnot or what, so they might not do the subscription thing. But
Maybe.
yeah, you're right. I do see them randomly every now and
Yeah.
then.
Them and Long John Silver's, like,
Oh my gosh.
who's keeping y'all in business?
Right.
So tell us what questions should we be asking for? What questions should we be asking when we are trying to find someone to help us with our finances? Do we need to have a CPA? Do we need to have a separate tax accountant? Do we have a separate tax preparer? So tax strategy? Can all this be
Yeah.
one person? All these people are expensive. What do we need to be looking for or asking?
Great question. I mean, when you're looking for somebody to really help with your finances, you want to know, number one, do they have a team? I think a lot of times we want like the owner to work on everything,
Mm-hmm.
and if you really truly understand everything that comes with the finance department, right? You have taxes. Taxes need to be prepared. You have tax planning that needs to be done. You have the bookkeeping. You might need them for payroll. You might need them for sales tax if you're e-com and you're selling in different states.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just so many things that you need an accountant to do for you, and one person can't do it all unless you're paying them handsomely. And a lot of us don't have the budget to pay 80, 90,000, right? So you want to make sure that you have a team that has different people working on the different things that you're looking for, and you also want somebody that has relevant knowledge in your industry, right? You don't just want them to be doing bookkeeping and taxes for
Mm-hmm.
you. Like you should be able to analyze my business and see, from a financial perspective and see what are some things that I should do. What can I cut back on? How can you help me forecast and budget for things to come? Can you help me create a cash flow forecast so I understand the money flow
Mm-hmm.
in my business? I think all those things are important. Um, and then, yeah, so relevant industry knowledge. Do they have a team of people that are working with them? And can they help advise you in certain areas instead of just only doing compliance related work?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times what ends up happening is, we'll hire an accountant because we're in the beginning, we can only afford, or our business is small, but then as you grow, you need to figure out, okay, now it's time to transition to somebody that can help me take my business where it's going. You don't ever want to be the biggest client that your um, accountant has, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want them to have worked with or are working with bigger clients than you because they can transfer that knowledge down into you.
So what questions are we asking when we're going to interview these people, right? Because I can tell you, I have in the whole time I've had a business, I've probably had 5 different people who worked, in accounting in some capacity for me.
Yeah.
But I can say the first two were trash, like complete trash. Like I'm finding all kind of mistakes,
Yeah.
and it's like, how could I have circumvented that in the beginning?
So, great question. A few questions that come to mind that I would ask is, when can I expect my financial statements,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Because they do
And
be
then if
they
it's
do be delayed
right,
sometimes with these people. Yes, you're right. Mm-hmm.
so if they say by the 15th of the next month, then now I write that down and I'm going to hold you accountable to that. I need to make sure that you're delivering everything on time, which means that I'm going to need to do my part. I'm going to need to answer the questions on time and things like that.
Yeah.
Also, do you meet with clients,
Mm-hmm.
and how often do you meet with them? A lot of us as accountants that don't want to meet with people often.
Mm-hmm.
We the less meetings the better, right? But I'm a believer that you need to meet with your client more often because you'll be able to be on top of their numbers a whole lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a team? Is a great question to ask. Do you have experience in my industry? Tell me some of the clients that you worked with and some of the impact that you've helped create for them. What results? We have a motto around here that we don't, we create results, not just reports. right? Because when
Like that.
when we went to Tuck in February, they were like, "Hey, you need a strategic principle." So I thought long and hard about that, and I was like, you know what, this is going to be our mantra from now on. I want every day that we come to work that we're trying to figure out how can we create results. We're not just here to create reports or whatnot and go through the
Yeah.
motions and stuff. So how much money can. So another question would be, hey, I'm going to give you my current financial statements, and I want you to analyze them and see how much money can you help me save or help me make, right?
Mm-hmm.
What can you pinpoint right now on this call that you see that I could improve or change or whatnot? Now, obviously, some of them might say, "Oh, I don't want to give that information away. I'd rather do it whenever you become a client." But just give me one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at it and tell me one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and then do you do tax planning? I think is another large one as well. And if you don't do tax planning, what solution do you have for your clients that need it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to get to the end of the year and you have this big tax bill that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then for e-commerce companies, ask this question of, do you handle sales tax? I'm at a certain point where I have a nexus in so many different states. This is what Shopify is telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you handle that? Can you help with that? And if not, do you have a solution for me in the event that you can't do that?
Those are great.
Yep.
Those are great. I hope everybody wrote that down, or at least watches the replay so that they can get those. Because I feel like, in the beginning, it was just, for me, it was just like, I was green, I was brand new. It was just me running my business, but I knew I needed an accountant. And I found somebody local, and it was a woman. I was like, oh, woman accountant. And she's like, not super duper young, like old enough to be experienced, but still youthful. And I like her, and she has a great personality. She can be my accountant. And then it was just like, she did the accounting for like a year, and I was just noticing all kind of holes, and it was just like, and then what really brought it home for me was when I was in 10,000 Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses. So I think she was my accountant for the first 2 years, because in my second year is when I was a part of
Mm,
Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses. And what they teach you in there is that your finances should tell a story. And if
yes.
you can't tell the story based upon your finances, if you are unclear on the story, then either you need a new financial professional, or you need to learn better how to read your finances. So they taught us how to read the finances, and I still couldn't tell a story with it. And it was like, okay, like, I got questions for you now. I'm asking her questions, and next thing I know, my call's not getting returned no more. And she's taking a lot longer to respond to things because she didn't have any
Yep.
answers, right?
Yep.
And so I was like, this is not going to work. So I had to find somebody else, and that person was local as well. It didn't work out, so forth and so on. But I think, like, that has been, like, in terms of finding people to work for my business, that aren't necessarily my employees, that has probably been the one thing that has been I've had a lot of turnover, but I think it was because it is every single one of them. Some of them have been great. Some of them have been really, really great. And it was just like, we just need to move on or whatever. But I just feel like that's such a big, important part of a business. And we don't spend enough time ensuring that that is the right fit. And
Yeah.
again, we get close to these people, and then we don't want to let them go. So at what point
Right.
what are some red flags when it comes to the finances that we need to say, okay, we need to reevaluate this relationship, or we need to just part ways?
Yeah. Great question. So timely reports,
Mm-hmm.
like that's number one thing, right? Can you produce timely, accurate reports to me every single month? And then also the tax process, right? Like there's a deadline. Why are you filing extensions, right? Like, are you filing an extension because you don't have your stuff together in the background?
Mm-hmm.
I've provided you everything. You should be able to get this done for me before the deadline,
Yeah.
right? That's where the whole team aspect comes into play, right? Because a lot of times we as accountants, we're great at what we do, but then are you now able to transfer that into team members? Are you able to go find talented people to come in and help you, right? Another thing too, pertaining to your question, would be the question was, repeat the question again.
What are some red flags that
Red
might come
flags.
up that indicate we might need to reevaluate the relationship or part ways
Yeah.
altogether.
They don't want to meet with you, or if they do, they don't really have like an agenda of what they're going to go over with you. I think that's important because a lot of times they're looking for you to kind of like guide the meeting, but they should be able to be the proactive one and be able to come into that meeting and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing on my end. You know, I know that these are your goals that you're trying to accomplish. This is what I'm seeing on my end to kind of help you navigate towards that. um, Specialized knowledge too, especially for ecom, man. There's not many um, great ecom accountants because it's challenging. It's a lot of moving pieces, the inventory, the different merchants, right? You have Afterpay, you have Klarna, you have Shopify, PayPal. So the accounting is complicated in itself. So a lot of accountants just avoid it. And then you have the accountants that don't really know much about it and they take it on without even knowing, like, oh, I just got myself into something that I can't really handle or I don't want to handle, you know? So I think that's very important for ecom to really find out, do you currently have a roster of e-commerce clients? And if so, what industries are they selling? Are they, because sometimes those people might, their roster of people might just be on Amazon and it may not be on Shopify, and that's totally different. If you have a brand on Shopify, you want a Shopify based accountant that can work with you.
All good stuff. All good stuff. So, can you tell me if there's any comments or questions that I can't see?
Yes. Let me scroll back. Um, Christine said, and what she said, I did Goldman Sachs cohort. LaGuardia graduated in 2014. Been connected with the alumni group because so much has changed. I also did Rutgers Entrepreneurs Pioneers Initiative and SBA Emerging Leaders. I'm going to go back to a lot that got me to where I am and where I was pre-COVID. I like that. Yeah, it's important. A lot of us still have all that material. Do we review it? Do we go over it? I think it's important to do that. Um, and some other questions we have or some comments are Melanie and Moss said, so it comes down to educating the public. Yeah, you got to educate the public. I think, me and you, Gwen, doing this, I think it's important, right, to have these conversations because we're at a certain place in our business and the people that aren't there yet, you're pulling the information, you're getting that from people that have already gotten to a certain place.
Yeah.
I think so that's important.
That question, I think too that, as much as we talk about finances when it comes to the business, like as the business owner, your personal finances are tied to you. And we are not versed on our personal finances. We don't even know how much money we spending on food every month, right? Like I just did a challenge and called the Fix My Money Challenge. And on day 2, one of the things that they have to do is they have to go through 3 months of their bank statements and credit card statements and highlight different categories. And so one is groceries, but another one is food, non-groceries, right? And so I would say we overspend on 3 main categories: food, fun, and family, right? And it's usually food that's the big one. People don't realize that like $20 here for Chick-fil-A and $50 here for drinks out with the girls and $5 here at 7-Eleven, over the course of a month really, really, really adds up. And so we were finding people who were spending $200, $300, sometimes $700 on just food, right? Again, not groceries. We're not talking about groceries. They ain't even spending that much on groceries. They spend a whole lot of money on just eating out here and there. You work downtown and, the cafe is next door, that sort of thing, and so it's like, I feel like it's one and the same almost for those of us who are business owners, because if we can't have our own personal stuff together, it's going to be really hard to have this business stuff together because, with the business, we're oftentimes taking money from the business to fund the personal, that sort of thing. We're dipping in places that we shouldn't be dipping in. And so I think, like, to Christine's point about, it's about educating the masses. Yes. But you and I are only 2 people, right? It's also up to the masses to seek out this stuff, right? To seek out Ephraim for help with their business finances, or to come to a Gwen for maybe the personal stuff if you need to fix your own money, or to find somebody else that's not us, right? Like
Hmm.
looking for these things. Like people aren't just, things are just gonna fall out the sky,
Yeah.
you know. And if we're not proactive about it, we will continue to be in the same position that we are individually and as a culture.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to blame a lot of things that we have some control over, you
Hmm.
know. So I want us to, like, because at the end of the day, like eventually we're going to exit the business,
Yeah.
right? Whether that involves us selling it, whether it involves us closing it, whether that involves us passing away, somehow we will exit, you know. And I think it's important that we have some sort of understanding of what our personal life is going to look like. Because the goal is not to work your fingers to the bone forever, right? You
Yeah.
want to build a business to where eventually it can run itself, or your staff can
Yeah.
run it for you, right? That's
Yeah.
the goal, not to be, you know, working your fingers to the bone to the white meat forever,
Yeah.
you know. And if we aren't proactive about getting this together, um, we are going to, and I say this as someone who did not want to talk about finances, who would like zone out when the when the accounting calls would happen, you know. Have someone who had to like have a reality check with myself and say, when you like, you're at this big age, you need to do better. You know,
Yeah.
you can't keep going along and blaming the fact that you're black on the fact that like your business isn't, like your business seems fine from a top level number, but your personal finances are not where they need to be, right? Like that has nothing to do with me being black. That's
Yeah.
everything to do with me not taking the initiative to fix my own shit, you know. And so I had to have that hard conversation with myself and get it together so that I could be in a much better space today, right? And I just don't think enough of us are doing that. But I think these conversations are important because it allows that to become top of mind for
Yeah.
someone to say to themselves, you know what, Ephraim's right. I do need to like ask these questions, these better questions to my accountant or my potential accountant. You know, I think this is
Mhm.
important and we should continue to have these type of conversations.
For sure. The accountability is hard, you know, but it's also a sign of growth, right? Like you telling yourself, you know what, a lot of the stuff that's happening, I could have done something different. That's growth, and it's only going to help us in our business. It's only going to help us to achieve what we're trying to achieve, you know, because it is easy to say, you know, and obviously there are factors that have happened
For sure.
throughout history for sure, and we're not neglecting that, you know, but if you sit in that for too long, then your energy is going to be in that, right? And it's all about whatever you focus your energy on, that's where things are going to happen. So you said something about there's help everywhere, like there's knowledgeable people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're focusing on, let's say I want to find an accountant or someone to work with me from a finance perspective, but I don't know anybody. If you focus on searching, even if it's 15 minutes a day, you're going to find somebody, right? Because your energy is focused on finding that, you know, just like in dating. If I don't trust my partner, I'm gonna search through her phone. I'm going to find something that because my energy is there where I'm trying to find it, so I'm gonna find it, right? So that's how I look at it or whatnot. And yeah, you said the personal finances. That's so important because with a lot of people that we worked with in the past, we've seen situations where the business is doing well, but the cash is just being bled because they're taking it out and they're spending on things personally,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've seen situations where, let's say a guy's running a business and his wife likes to spend money. You know, she has access, she's pulling from it. I've seen situations where he has a spending habit and he's spending like crazy,
Yeah.
right? Because you think the money is always going to come, it's always going to be there.
Right.
And then you have moments like this in the economy where it wakes you up and you're like, oh crap, like you start to really look at, I made $10 million over the past 10 years and I have nothing to show for it. You know,
Yeah.
that's a hard reality, you know, and now it's like, okay, I got to start doing better. And reality creeps in like, oh, I'm 40 something. I got to really get my act together or whatnot. Right. So, yeah, the personal side is just as, if not more important. And a lot of money is being spent on Instacart, is being spent on Uber Eats, Postmates, all of that. Right. Me and Rita were talking about that recently. We were looking at all the money we were spending on Uber Eats and Instacart. and we realized that the prices were inflated, right? When you look at the menu at the restaurant compared to what's on Uber Eats, way higher, right? And we're like, why is that? Well, Uber Eats charged 30%. They
Mm-hmm.
got to recoup that 30% somehow, so they're going to raise the price, and they're going to hit you with a delivery fee, a service fee, a tip. It just makes sense to just get in your car and go pick up
Right.
that food.
Right.
Now, the only thing I have different, like if you are a single mom and you have kids,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, it makes sense to use Instacart. Well, depending upon where you are financially,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because packing up the kids and taking them to the grocery store might actually cause more problems because you might end up overspending and buying more things because they're reaching for stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Or if you have a project that you're working on, you have a funnel or a landing page and you're focused, but you need to eat. Do you really want to get up and go get the food, or can the food come to you? You know, opportunity
Mm-hmm.
costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to go get the food might take 30 minutes, 45 minutes out of your schedule, right? So really looking at it like that. Now, if you're just enjoying the moment, you're on the couch and you want a pizza or something like that, go pick it up. You know, like
Yeah.
don't really spend, like, try to avoid the apps as much as possible, because and then even Uber, all these apps are killing our accounts, you know, and if we, I'm not saying don't use it, but really manage it properly.
Mm-hmm. I think too, it's something I teach in the Fix My Money Challenge is um, living the same lifestyle but at a reduced cost. So I
Mm,
am not the person who's going to ever tell anybody like you can't have your daily latte. Like I think that's stupid. You know, like this $5 a day is not. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a what $5 a day is $100 in a month, or a little over $100 in a month. You know,
yeah.
but it is like 150 or so. But yes, but that's not really doing the big issues to my finances, right?
Hmm.
We are not spending the time to really dig into our finances. Every Friday, I do something called I call Financial Fridays.
Mm,
And my whole Friday is dedicated to my money. That's all I do. I don't work on the business, either business. I just focus on my finances on Fridays. And when I first started doing this, it would take me longer than it does now because I'm in a routine with it. And so I've cleaned up a lot of stuff. And so things are just smooth sailing now. So now it can take me like an hour or two, depending on what's going on. But it used to take me a few hours. And at the end of the month, on a Friday, I would go through, I would highlight my bank statements, right? I would make myself do this, and I would highlight the different categories, same categories I tell them to highlight in the Fix My Money Challenge, and I would see, is my food that I spent money on par with what it traditionally has been? Is
mm,
the amount of money I spent on fun or entertainment, is that on par? Is it above or below what I consider to be, you know, I hate the word budget because it feels so restrictive sometimes, but I have something I call a money map, right? So is it on par with my
yeah.
money, and that sort of thing. But then one day I was looking and I noticed how much I was spending on health insurance for my son and I. And it was like, he and I are healthy people, but we rarely ever go to the doctor.
Mm,
And through my business, I offer health insurance. But because I'm a small business, I don't get like incredible rates or anything, right?
yeah.
So it was costing me and my son about a little less than $800 a month just for the two of us who don't ever go to the doctor.
Mm,
And I was like, this is insane. Can I reduce this cost? So most people, I think, would just take that cost and be like, it is what it is, complain about it, bitch and moan about it on social media,
yeah.
and then, you know, that'll be it. But I think it's important for us to start to like take control of
Yeah.
our situations and say, how can I can't not have health insurance,
Right.
but maybe I don't need to pay as much, right?
Yeah.
So I started researching around and I found another brokerage that wasn't through my company. Now I still offer it at my company, and my employees, they can use it if they want to. I'm not using it because it costs too much, right?
Yeah.
But I found another brokerage. I wanted to make sure I had the same health insurance company. I want the same doctor for myself and same doctor for my son and same dermatologist. And I wanted the same therapist. I wanted all that to still be covered. I found all of that at a different brokerage for $241 a month. So that's
Mm,
560 some dollars a month that I ended up saving just by making one change. And my lifestyle didn't change in that moment. I still had the
yep.
same everything, same company, same doctors, the whole nine. I just spent the time to research around and find a different company to continue to give me the quality of life that I would like to have, but at a
Mhm.
reduced cost. And I
Mhm.
think the same thing with like cell phones. Like I pay for myself, my son, and my dad. And we had T-Mobile, and I was paying like $240 a month for the three of us. My
Yeah.
dad's 83 years old and does not know how to use data with his phone. He uses his
Yeah.
phone for what it's made for, to be a phone, right? He's
Yeah.
not browsing the internet. He barely know how to text, right? And so why do I need unlimited data for my dad?
Yeah.
Right? I don't.
Right.
He doesn't need all that. My son, he's in school half the day. He can't use his phone no way. Right? He can
Yeah.
only use it on the weekends and when he's home. So it's like, and even then he has restricted hours because he can't be on it all night. I'm the only one who really needs unlimited, right? So
Right.
it's like, let's look at this. Do we really need to be paying $240 a month? No. So I ended up switching us to Mint Mobile, which is owned by T-Mobile.
Mhm.
So it's on the exact same network. I have the exact same service. And now my dad's bill is like $25 a month, but he doesn't have like a cricket phone or whatever, like the old people phones. He has like a normal phone, but it's
Yeah.
only $25 a month. My son is now he comes in at around $50 a month, and my bill is like 70.
Mm.
So significant price difference, right? So I'm
Mhm.
paying like less than 150,
Yeah.
where I was paying almost $100 more, but I still have the same level of service. So I think that's important for us to look for in our business and our personal, because
Mhm.
in business, what expenses do you have that you could cut or replace and
Mhm.
still be able to offer the same level of service to your clients and your customers, but then also be able to experience the same level of enjoyment or whatever that you have with your business, if not greater,
Right.
because you have more financial cushion. I feel like that's a part of how you create that cushion that you were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about, is being able to do that. So,
Yeah.
because it's not about how much you spend, it's about how much you keep. So I
For
get off my
sure.
soapbox now.
I love it. I love so those are practical things that everybody can do. And like you said, how do you make those changes without it impacting your lifestyle?
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, it registers with them like, oh, I got to cut all these things. That means that I'm gonna live like I'm broke
Right.
again. I don't want to do that. But no, you can make changes and still maintain a certain lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's really just about, like you said, taking the time
Mm-hmm.
to really dive and comb through each of the things that you're spending money on.
Yeah.
And there's some good apps out there. I use Rocket Money.
Mm-hmm.
That's been really good. So there's things that people can
Yeah.
implement.
Yeah. Do we have any comments or questions before we wrap up?
Melanie Lamar said, "What's the name of that program again?" I think uh, she was talking about, I think maybe Tuck or Goldman Sachs. And Joy said, "Hey y'all, hey Joy,
Hey,
what's going on?" Okay, yeah,
Joy.
Goldman Sachs was the one. Um, Christine said Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small businesses. They also have a Tory Burch program and something specifically for Black women businesses. Yep. And then Hello Francis B says, "Where and how did you find the brokerage?"
So I literally just went to Google and I searched for healthcare brokerages.
Mm,
Like Google is our friend. Also
yeah.
YouTube. Like YouTube is so underutilized by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like I always feel like unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, you don't even really need to go to college. Like, because there's so much on YouTube now. But YouTube and Google, but specifically this brokerage. I mean, I can tell you the name of it. It's not a secret. I'm not a gatekeeper. The name of it is Xander Insurance, but they are not an insurance company. They're just a broker. So it's Xander, Zander, and the way I found out about them is one, Google, two, YouTube. I saw a lot of people talking about this particular
Mm,
company, and three, I took Financial Peace University through my church. Um,
nice.
and Dave Ramsey, facilitates or has created Financial Peace University. And there's a part of the program that you go through where he starts talking about insurance. And someone in my little group, like when you take it in a large group of people, they put you in smaller groups. And someone in my smaller group mentioned Xander Insurance as well. So that was like the third time I heard about it.
Mm,
And I went to the website and I saw Dave Ramsey actually endorses it. So I was like, oh, I trust Dave Ramsey. So I checked it out, did my due diligence, and I found that they were able to legit get me significantly reduced insurance, amongst other things. Like they also broker what do you call it, like digital safety. I don't know how to explain it, but
Hmm.
like when people get your information and they use it on
Hmm.
the dark web, like they have like a program that you can pay
Mm.
to prevent that from happening to you, right? That sort of thing. Or alerting you whenever your information is on the dark web or someone may have stolen your information, that sort of thing. And that was like $12 a month. But the insurance they have, I don't know if they have car insurance, but they definitely have health insurance. So that's where I got it from. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no, that's everybody. That's all the comments we have.
All right. Well, Ephraim, let us know where people can find you. And specifically, can you help people with business and personal? Or, I know we all have to niche down. Or you only focus now on business?
Yeah, yeah. So we're focused on business right now. I mean, there's some things that we're trying to do on the personal side. Like we do like net worth monitoring where we help clients monitor their net worth to see, 'cause I have a personal mission. I'm trying to help 1,000 people become accredited investors
Oh,
over the next 10
I
years.
love it.
Yeah, yeah. So, because in my head, it's like, okay, if you're building a business, it should impact you personally somehow,
Mhm.
right? Like you should be able to say, okay, this is some of the things that I've been able to accomplish personally,
Yeah.
and if you're not looking at your net worth and you're just operating every day, you're not going to have that mindset to say, oh, I need to really start to focus on that more
Yeah.
or whatnot. So yeah, we do that. We focus on business, and people can find me on Instagram at Ephraim CPA. I'm on Facebook too at my name, Ephraim Egbelly CPA. I have a group called A Figure Focus that everyone can follow. We have a community as well where we talk about all things finance and business. We do trainings each week. Um, yeah, and I'm on YouTube as well at my name, Ephraim CPA.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, if you need someone for your business and you don't already use Ephraim, because you might, make sure that you contact him. Um, and I can tell you, as someone who previously worked with Ephraim, he is very professional, and I did get my books on time every month. I never had to worry or chase him down, or not him, but his team down, to get my books. So thank you all for joining today's episode. And because we were not able to get this on YouTube at the time, I'm going to try to download it and then repost it,
Yeah.
so that the YouTube audience can see it as well. But thank you for joining. Love you all for being here. And we'll see you next week on the Get Money Show. Thanks, Ephraim.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.